What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Ball2books Spotlight. My name is Drew Heath, one of the co-founders of Ball2books and your host for today. As always, with Ball2books Spotlight, we're here to showcase individuals that play sports at a very high level and now transitioned into a different career, whether it be within that same sport or a different industry. I've been lucky enough to call the Bay Area my home the past couple of years. Today, we have a Bay Area legend with us. She has her jersey retired at Urban High School. She was a Division I hooper. She had a chance to play in the WNBA and overseas as well. She's a current educator at Reardon High School and also does her own basketball training under her brand as well. Lucky enough to call this person a friend and someone I know. Today we have Jene Morris. Jene, what's up?
How you doing, Drew?
I'm good. I appreciate you tapping in with us and lending some of your time. So very grateful for it.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
So let's just jump right into it. As I said, you're from the Bay, but where'd you grow up and how you first introduced to sports?
Yeah, so I grew up in San Francisco in a neighborhood called Westwood Park. To be honest, my start in basketball happened way before my memory. I was told that when I was 2 years old, everything that was around, I just called it balls. Used to go grocery shopping, pulling the oranges from the pyramids, having oranges fall all over the place. I just was always obsessed with round things. And then when I turned about 5 years old, my grandmother signed me up for my first basketball team at Ocean View Park and Rec.
Okay.
They're one of the Park and Recs in San Francisco. And yeah, just kind of started from there and took off, and my love for basketball never ended. And yeah, just God created a lot of opportunities to let me continue my path in basketball. So yeah.
That's awesome. And was hoop the only sport you played growing up, or were you?
No, so up until about 8th grade, I played soccer, I played flag football. I wanted to play tackle football, but my mom wouldn't let me. My brother played tackle football, so of course I wanted to compete with him. But no, soccer, softball, flag football. But my main two sports going into high school was basketball and soccer.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as mentioned, you have your jersey retired at alma mater, Urban High School. What was that experience like, just both on and off the court, your time at Urban?
Yeah, so, going to Urban was kind of a big deal when I was coming around, just because Urban was well known for their academics. I think they're ranked like top 5th in the nation or something when I was attending there, but they weren't really known for sports at all. So, going there was a big risk. I received a lot of criticism for going there. I'll never make it to college. No one watches the league that Urban is currently playing in. But it was fun. I always like to be a part of something that's building. I've learned that about myself, and that's kind of transitioned into the regular world for me, is always being a part of creating something.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, we before I went there, I think they had won 4 games the year before.
Oh, wow.
And by the time I graduated, 2 years in a row, we were a game shy from a state title. So it was fun. It was a lot of hard work. And kind of siloed because not a lot of people had faith in what we were trying to do. But that built a strong family. I'm still best friends with my teammates to this day. And yeah, I appreciate Urban for everything they did for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm familiar with the school, obviously, because working at Drew School and kind of hear the same thing with our kids that are in whatever sport, whether it be soccer, basketball, kind of the same wording of just like, well, if you go to school here, you can't play at the next level. And people like yourself and a few other kids have definitely proven that wrong, which is dope.
Yeah.
So you killed at Urban, and then college is the next step. What was the decision? Where'd you go? I know you played at a few different spots. So what was the initial first decision going into the next level of playing ball?
So the initial first decision, the class that I was being recruited with, grew up playing with them. They were from Oakland in the East Bay. But, with AAU, you play around, local teams, local cities, as well as, across the nation. But the class I was recruited with, we were all friends. And so the coach who was recruiting us kind of always petitioned it that, we would be the start of the new Golden State Bears. And so as soon as we signed our letter of intent, the coach who recruited us got fired. He was let go. And so that kind of set a new narrative for me with going to Berkeley. The new coach had no idea who I was. You know, I went to Urban, small school, wasn't really well known. And so just unfortunately, the coach and I we didn't sync. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. And so I had to make a choice, and a scary choice, to like leave my friends that, you know, we thought we were going to do this journey together. But unfortunately, I felt it was better for me to leave. Overall, Berkeley was a great school. I always say if I could attend there without being a hooper, I love Berkeley. Berkeley was a great school. But unfortunately, in combining my experience with sports, it kind of just wasn't a good fit. So transferred to San Diego State, another program that was rebuilding. Yep. They didn't win a lot of games prior to me arriving, and with the help of my teammates, we had an amazing coach. Like, we made it all the way to the Sweet 16, you know. So it was fun. Both teams that I joined with college were rebuilding, and then I just transferred to a team that had a better fit for me, team-wise and coach-wise. So
nice, that's awesome. And were you there the same time Kawhi was? Was that the same?
Yeah, so we actually got drafted the same year, so it was actually pretty cool. Okay. Yeah, we got drafted the same year. It was a good year for San Diego State. Okay, I didn't realize that. That's dope. Yeah.
Yes, speak on that a little bit. Speak on the draft experience, your time in the W. I've seen some cool pics of you guarding up Taurasi and playing against her. Yeah. What was that whole experience like?
Yeah, to be honest, my whole time through it, it just felt surreal. Once again, I went to not small college, but a lesser known college for basketball and women's basketball. So I'm at the draft with all these, you know, big name players that I recognize from either, you know, studying them in film or just knowing them in the basketball world. You know, I'm sitting with these well-known hoopers. And so for me, I'm in shock. You know, I always had a lot of low confidence, didn't really have a great self-esteem. And so me sitting there with all these big players, you know, I'm just like, okay, well, I guess I'll get comfortable. I'm not going to go into the second round. Like, I took my shoes off. I was really comfortable. I was straight chilling. And so during the draft, they have a cameraman who kind of eases his way through the crowd to try to get a good angle of the next person that's getting drafted. Yeah. So there's a board that has next best available in the room. My name's nowhere to be found, okay? I'm nowhere on this board. So I'm straight chilling. I see the camera guy starting to make his way on like the 8th or 9th pick, but I had like Jene Morris behind me. I had some big ballers sitting behind me. So I'm like, okay, let me just turn over, get out the way, go ahead, call the next. And they ended up calling my name. And ooh. I was in shock. Like I said, my shoes are off. I'm smiling, trying to put my shoes on the table. Like, I was in complete shock. But it was a blessing, you know. I think it was a blessing, not just for myself, but the San Diego State program, just because we turned around that program so quickly, you know. And I really think my draft spot was, I wouldn't say secured, but I think it was determined that I'd go higher in the draft just because of my performance in the NCAA tournament. Okay. And, you know, I'm grateful. I had a good run. It was awesome, but I was not prepared of playing in the WNBA. And then just overall playing in the WNBA was surreal because I'm playing against players that I grew up watching. Right. You know, I'm literally guarding Diana Taurasi, who I used to make believe playing against her in my head, you know, on the playground, you know. So actually being in the same room and on the same court and sharing locker rooms with players I grew up with, you know, Tamika Catchings on the Fever, Brianne January, Katie Douglas, you know, all these big time players that I grew up watching, like I'm actually on the floor with them. So I was a little bit of starstruck really for my first year. Every single game, every single time I stepped on the floor with these players, I'm like, this is crazy. Like I'm here. Like I'm a pro now. And it took me a little while to adjust to. But I think playing overseas, you know, it really helps you gain more experience. Because you're playing more games, you're playing a variety of different caliber of players. So overall, I think the balance of the WNBA and overseas works well for like rookies who don't really get that much playing time in the WNBA.
Yeah. So what was the first country you went to after WNBA?
Oh man, my first country. Mind you, I'm a Cali kid, okay? Grew up in San Francisco, went to school at Berkeley and then transferred to San Diego. Cali kid. And my first country was Poland. During the winter. And Oh man, that was rough for me. It was so cold. It was so cold. And I think
Snowing
the
or snow on the
town,
ground?
oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, and we played in dresses. So imagine us in dresses playing in the snow. Like it was a bad combination of definitely culture shock. But first country could have been worse, you know. The only bad negative thing I had to say about it was the weather. You know, my teammates were nice. They were very accommodating. You know, they tried to make sure I understood what they were saying. They're like talking really slow and helping with translation. Great country, but just too cold. I'd like to visit it during the summer or spring. You know,
Yeah.
winter was just way too cold. Way too cold. Yeah.
What other countries did you play in, and what was your favorite one to play in?
I played in Spain, I played in Israel, I played in Poland, and I played a little bit in Turkey. My favorite country by far was Spain. A, it's a beautiful country, people are amazing, but B, you know, I took Spanish growing up, so it was a little bit more familiar and easier transition for me to actually communicate with those around me. But the cool part is I didn't realize there were so many like different dialects of Spanish. So
Okay.
where I lived, they spoke Catalan,
Yep.
which was like a combination of like French and Spanish a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So I went there confident, and then I get there and it's just a little different. But you know, for example, you know, buenos dias is bon dia, or you know, buenos noches is bona nit. So it was a little different, but it was easier for me to adapt to just because I understood a little bit of the language. But I didn't have any issues with any country I lived in. Everyone was very friendly, very nice. Yeah, I really have no complaints other than like the different weather. But Poland was the extreme. That was the worst situation to transition to for me. Yeah.
Freezing and playing in dresses. That's definitely
that was rough.
One for the memory books. Yeah. So how long was your overall career, and when did you start thinking about like life after playing, or like what's
Yeah.
after hooping?
So I thought about it, to be honest, I started thinking about it before I became a pro, just because it wasn't my goal to become pro. And up until that last run in the NCAA tournament, you know, I didn't think it was an option to go pro. So I thought about my life after basketball quite early in my life. Got my degree in communications. I wanted to go in advertising and marketing. I did a few internships at the end of my college career to like get ready and prepare for that. But I got drafted. So that kind of changed the plans a little bit. And so I ended up hurting my hip. So that kind of sped up the ending to my career. I tore my hamstring before the Sweet 16, played on it during the Sweet 16, and just never took time to get it healed. You know, being a rookie and not wanting to get waived and being concerned about that, I just kept playing on it.
Yeah.
But hip started to go out on me, needed a hip replacement by 24. And then life really set in like, okay, you have to quit. There's really, you can't keep pushing through at this point. Your hip is giving out. So transitioned into the real world as a personal trainer. I went and got my NASM certification and thought, you know, I'd be training, you know, either future athletes or those who want to get better in shape. But it really set the tone for my passion afterwards, which was diabetes prevention. A lot of my clients had diabetes. So left the fitness industry, went into the pharmaceutical industry and started working for a diabetes eye injection called Lucentis.
Okay.
From there, transitioned to the American Diabetes Association. And from there, I started working in health tech, and the company I worked for in tech specialized in diabetes prevention. So everything kind of was, you know, it all began when I became a personal trainer and got introduced into that specific, you know, population of diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, etc. So did that, worked in tech for about 5 years, and then I got burnt out. So after the tech burnout, I was like, okay, what can I do that is purposeful? You know, I'm living back home. You know, economically, it's difficult to survive back home in the Bay Area by yourself, you know, especially by yourself. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I do that will still allow me to have purpose, but allow me to still sustain and live on my own in the Bay Area? So that brought me to education. And so, of course, my brother works at Archbishop Bearden High School. He went there, loves the school, like is the #1 ambassador for the school. And so he's like, like you might like working at Reardon. We have a position available. And so I met with the school, and it was a match made in heaven. They really liked the skill set that I brought to the table. And I really just like the idea of giving back and helping high school students make their dreams come true. So yeah, I started working at Reardon, and it's been awesome. I never viewed myself as a role model up until a few years ago, very selfish in my own world. But really working at the school has opened up my eyes to being a role model, being a mentor, being at that age and not really knowing what to do and where to go and which is the best decision, making an impact by helping them make those decisions has been really, really purposeful and really amazing for sure.
That's awesome. And that's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you. At Reardon, but also just along your journey, especially after sports, like how important is representation, like at your current job, being a Black woman in a higher position for those younger kids, or even if not in a school, just working in tech?
Yeah.
I know a lot of times we're one of one when we walk in the room. So if you can just kind of, just speak on that, just like working and how important representation is in any of your jobs.
Yeah. Representation is just important in general. I can break down the different paths that it's crossed me with. So in tech, there was no one else in the company. I'm literally one of one in these meetings and these decision-making meetings and the strategic meetings, and it's hard sometimes when you have a different perspective and background as those others in the room. Sometimes it's hard to stand up for yourself just because you feel like you're solo. And a lot of times in, the workplace or, depending on which path you choose, you speaking up for yourself is important. And so for me, and especially in the workplace, I really try to stress and, preach about diversity and inclusion. And most of two of my tech jobs, I started a diversity and inclusion committee, really trying to help these companies focus on bringing more representation because it's difficult. It's difficult to thrive. It's difficult to succeed when you're by yourself. But it's important, for the company to realize how difficult it is for the experience of their employee, but B, for the employee to help the company, bring referrals, reach out to your community where you know that, others are looking for jobs, help place them in a position where, they can work with you. And then in the school, it's funny that being a role model has really, really helped me change a little bit just because I'm more open to talking with the youth. Before working in education, it was always, I'm the adult, they're the child, and kind of just that dynamic of relationship. It changes with the high school student, I'm not the adult and they're not the child. Like we're kind of,
it's closer.
It's a little closer. So I find myself being able to actually just speak with them and providing life advice and providing things that I went through. And that's changed the dynamic of how I train now. Now that I've had these experiences with these children and understand the mindset and where they're at, that helps me to become a better trainer because now I'm helping these kids off the court as well. It's definitely training on the court, but helping them off the court. And so representation also leads me to that, being someone who made it to the pros, being someone who played in college, being someone who had to create her own path at a high school level. I'm able to relate more to these kids and let them know that it is possible. Literally anything that you want to do, it is possible. It just depends on what you do, what decisions you make. And I try to be that person that helps the kids navigate some of those tough decisions.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Working with high school age kids is interesting. Because I think most people have experience working at a camp or something, like working with little kids. But working full time in a high school, you realize how, like kind of say, like how close they are to adulthood, and they are curious about your journey or how you got there, and they're really willing to have like semi-adult conversations and kind of be inquisitive about that. Were there any, it sounds like there was a smooth transition from playing into the workforce. Were there any challenges along the way? I know a lot of athletes, you know, they finish playing and then they're just like, what the hell is 9 to 5? You
Oh
know?
yeah, it was a very tough decision, that transition for me. I had nothing on my resume. You know, I had a few internships here and there, but being a 25-year-old, 24-year-old, you know, giving someone a resume, there's literally nothing on it. You know, that was humbling for me, but it was also very frustrating because it's hard to get your start when you don't really have much to work with in the beginning. So, you know, I had to take jobs where I was a contractor, you know, just to get my foot in the door. But from there, you know, I was promoted fast. I was able to climb the rankings pretty fast. But in the beginning, it was very difficult, you know, applying for jobs where you really don't have much in your resume. So I had to be flexible, you know, I had to work in maybe industries where I wouldn't have worked, but it was just an opportunity for me to get my foot in the door. But I'm grateful for those jobs who, you know, have contractors and have positions out like that, because it helps those who are just building their resume get their feet wet. Overall, my experience was pretty good. You know, like I said, I was able to climb the rankings pretty fast. Once I was able to get my foot in the door, I really didn't have any problems with the transition from like 9 to 5, just because as a pro hooper, you do have a 9 to 5. You're just on a court.
Right.
You know, as a pro hooper, you're getting up 6 o'clock. You know, you have film, you have conditioning, you have practice. Then you come back at the late end of the day, you have practice again, you have more film sessions. So the 9 to 5 wasn't an issue, just because, you know, as a hooper, you are working a 9 to 5. It's just not in the office. But for me, it was the confidence and courage to thrive off the court, you know, to speak up in those meetings, to give, you know, your opinion on what the strategy should be here, and, you know, being able to work cross collaboratively with other departments, and just being in a room with those who have different experiences in the workplace with you is it's very humbling. Like I said, it's very humbling, very, very humbling. But overall, it was a good transition. It was a good transition.
I think the finding your voice part after is always tricky for some people, right? It's, you could be the most confident MVP, 30-point a game player, and then it's like you're in a boardroom and it's like, oh crap, like
Yeah,
how do
yeah,
I manage this situation?
yeah. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking like, okay, they're just viewing me as this hooper, you know?
Yeah.
So like, in the beginning, to be quite honest, I took away the basketball part of my resume.
Okay.
I actually didn't put that I played in the WNBA. You know, I didn't really specify me being a collegiate athlete or a professional athlete, because I didn't want to be judged in that light. I felt like others would be very judgmental and, oh, you know, she's not that smart. It's the typical stereotype of athletes. You know, I was afraid of facing that in the real world. So I definitely took off basketball from my resume for a good 5 years, 6 years. And
Okay.
once I started building my skill set and,
Yeah.
you know, building skills, then I added it like, oh, there's a plus, like, oh, she's in college, you know, but it wasn't the first thing that they saw and the only thing that they saw. So yeah, that was a good point. I definitely hid my status as a basketball player in the beginning. Yeah.
I like that. And 5 years later, it's like, not only can I lead the meeting, but I'll give you buckets on.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly.
So you mentioned you do some training as well too. Which is like totally different from like we were growing up, right? There weren't these individual coaches, personal trainers. If you were lucky, you had like an uncle or an older cousin or somebody or sibling who kind of showed you the ropes. But how is that? Like, speak on like what ages you teach, boys, girls. Do you enjoy it? Because even myself, there are some days I'm just like, wow, this is just completely different than my experience growing up. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's cool actually to be that person that you needed when you were growing up. You know, and that's really how I approach all the kids that I work with. You know, when I was their age, what did I need someone else to help me with? Whether that's on the court skill development, you know, off the court mentorship, or just being that liaison between the player and their parents, or the player and their coach, you know, being that in-between person that can step in and be like, you know, hey, these players experience this and they need this from you guys, you know, as a support system, or vice versa. You know, a parent doesn't know how to communicate to their child, so they use me as a liaison to be like that buffer. So that part's really cool. I work with ages, let's see, the youngest I've ever trained was 6 years old, which is really early. And I trained all the way up through college, probably around sophomore year of college. My sweet spot that I like to train is between 6th and 8th grade.
Yeah.
That's really where they're at an age where they can do things, they're more skilled at that level, but also their minds are wide open and their eyes are wide open. And that's when, they're at an age where they really have dreams and aspirations. I like working with high school as well, but I love that sweet spot of 6th to 8th grade, just because that age group is just so much fun, so much fun. Yeah.
I also feel like that 6 to 8 age group, 6th to 8th grade age group, they haven't fully discovered sarcasm yet. So they're not like talking like the high school kids might give you a little lip sometimes. It's like, all right, hold up. But yeah, no, that age group, and all young kids are just sponges, right? They just soak up everything. So that's dope. That's dope. Any advice for someone that wants to follow, whether it be a basketball career, a young Black girl that's looking to get into tech or work in education, or if they're literally, I want to follow the exact same thing that Jene did, like, what are a few tips of advice you got for somebody?
Oh man, first and foremost, which is something I still struggle with today, is have confidence in yourself. When you decide that you have something that you want to aspire to, or you know the path that you want to take, have confidence in the work that you put in to get there. I think nowadays, the next generation, everyone's putting in work in some way, shape, or form. But I know a lot of players struggle with the confidence to be able to perform. And so at any level, whether you're working at a full-time job, you're playing basketball, you're in school, have confidence in the work that you put in. Second point that ties to that is put in the work. There is no excuse, especially for basketball players in today's time, to not put in the work.
Yeah.
There's YouTube channels, there's apps, there's, trainers on demand, there's more AAU programs now than ever. AAU is a huge thing now. Back in our day, there weren't that many teams. And if you got on a team, you were very blessed, there's so much opportunity in today's time. So do the work, have confidence in the work that you put in. And the last one kind of ties into have fun, but make connections. You will meet so many people in your sports journey, whether that's basketball, baseball, football, whatever. Make connections, because later in life, those connections may be the difference of you getting a job or not getting a job. Those connections may be the difference of an opportunity presenting itself and you didn't even know it was an opportunity. And that's something that I wish I would have took more time with growing up. Taking the path that I took, I always had to be the best, I always had to be the top. I always had to, set the tone. But thinking back on it, like, I could have been a better teammate about it. I could have been a better teammate and taking into consideration, what other players on the team might have been experiencing. I still have some great friends to this day that I play basketball with, but I wish I would have valued the connections and networking more when I was a kid, for sure.
I like that. I love all those. So with it being called Ball2books, do you have any book recommendations that you might want to check out?
This is a long one, so I suggest if you have a lot of time, read this one, but The Warmth of Other Suns, one of my favorite books that I've just finished. It talks about the Great Migration, or the second Great Migration, where African Americans were migrating to the north and the west, and so it follows 3 different generations. And so I really love that book because it helped me understand my ancestors a lot and what they went through to come to San Francisco. My people come from Texas and Oklahoma, so we had to get to San Francisco somehow. And so just the book really highlighting what they went through and the struggles they went through, it really made me appreciate the struggle that came before me. Trying to think of books when I was a kid. I think it was called Hoop Dreams. Was that the name of the book?
I think it was a book, and then they turned it into a movie.
They did.
Yeah.
But I remember the book. That's the
Yep.
first. I remember the book. Hoop Dreams was a really good book. And then just coming up, I read the Allen Iverson. He had like a little biography that I read. That one was a really cool book. There was a book about I think it's called Hoopers in the Night, but I could be wrong with that book. But that was another basketball book that I read growing up. But as an adult, my books are a little longer, a lot longer. So Warmth of Other Suns, Relentless. That was a very good book. It's about mindset and how your mindset really determines how you succeed in life. So yeah, those are my top books for sure. And the Bible, but you know, the Bible's number one. Bible's number one.
Yeah. Where can we check you out if people want to find you? Any social media you want to plug? Any websites or anything?
Yeah, Instagram is jenemorris.com. So that's I am and then JENE Morris. I have a website, jenemorris.com, and that's really where you can find me for personal training, mentorship, just any of the training needs. But yeah, that's about it. I'm on Instagram, but I'm not a huge social media person. So anybody who wants to teach me how to use TikTok, I really appreciate it, because I'm lost with TikTok now. I thought I was good with Instagram, but TikTok has taken social media to a whole new level, and I'm just—
You got all the dances down?
I'm not a dancer, so maybe that's why I'm struggling with TikTok, because I'm not a dancer. And everything seems to be around dancing. So I may officially get left in this portion of social media. I may get left.
You'll figure it out. I got faith in you. Well, Jene, this was dope. I appreciate you so much. You really are a goat out here and just in general in life. So appreciate the time and the advice and the knowledge you lent us. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in to Ball2books Spotlight. We'll see you guys next time.